template here for an annotated bibliography, which is kind of like a list you make for yourself of resources that you can use in writing your paper, how they're identified in terms of writer and title and things like that, where you can find them, and also what they're about. So there's also a template for milestone 1, 2, and 3 that's a little bit different, but just get used to using the template here. The note here says that you have to remember the papers to be written in your own words. That's really important. Don't forget that. It also says that you can remove the note and all others when you're done reading them. A template is identified by a bracket, like here and here, and you can get rid of it by simply cutting it out. From there, you move on to what will be your title page, which is the HCM Annotated Bibliography. And you may laugh at me here because my typing is pretty funny. Whoops. This is comic relief for you and to show you that everybody's human. So type your first and last name, which is anybody Howard. And then the course number and name, you just highlight it and start typing. And then you put my name in, and it is literally just my first and last name. You don't put in any credentials or anything like that. As you can see, I can't even type my own name. And then the date the assignment is due, which in this case is going to be January 15th, I believe, of this year. I'm going to leave that open. And then you move on to where you're actually doing the annotated bibliography. I mentioned that there is a formatting structure that is used, and that's the American Psychological Association, or APA, method of formatting. You're going to see this again and again, so it makes sense to try to get used to it now. In this section, just the very first section of this template, they give you some clues and some hints so that you can know how you're going to format something. If it's a book, you're going to have the author's last name and initials, the date in parentheses, the title of the book in italics, and where you got the book from, which it might be Macmillan Publishers or something like that. You're going to do a lot of web pages and a lot of journal articles. And again, you would always have the author's last name and initials, the date in parentheses, and then for a web page, the title of the web page is going to be in italics. The website will then be identified, and then you'll type out https colon backslash www, whatever the address is, .com, because you want to be able to show exactly where you got the information. Don't just put in a link. Address it like this. And if you are doing a journal article, you'll do the same thing with the author. You may have 2 authors. You may have 3 authors. There are various ways to do this. And you can find a lot of information about this either in your APA publication manual, which is a required book, or in the Shapiro Library. And then you're going to do title of article, which will just have initial caps, not every word capitalized. And then you'll have the title of the journal and the volume or the issue, and that's going to be in italics. Then you'll have the page numbers, and if you've gotten this from the Shapiro Library, you may see a DOI format, so you'll have the DOI number. So that information is there just for your reference. You probably want to copy it. So just print it and keep it for your own reference. But if you were then going in to fill out this this section, you're going to do something. You're going to describe a specific gap in the delivery of healthcare. So say you are working on care coordination, which is one of the 3 acceptable topics. So you can have, say, something called All About Care Coordination. And then you're going to give the APA formatted reference. So what you're going to do is highlight that to get rid of it, and then type in this is an old reference, so don't actually use it. And actually, it's made up. So let's change it to something more current, 2023, August 3rd, because we'll say it's a journal article. And we'll have all about care coordination, which is the title. Then you're going to have care coordination monthly, which is also a made-up journal. And we'll say it's volume 18. And we'll say it's pages 12 to 24. And then we're going to have where you got it. And the last thing we have to do, is make sure that we put this in italics. Then you can summarize the content of the source, and that may be this article talks about the gap related to why care coordination is needed for patients with chronic disease. And then we'll move on to the next one. Why is this resource relevant to your chosen topic? And you can say it talks about people, I told you I'm comic relief here, with chronic disease who encounter problems with coordinated care. And that'll just be a clue to yourself as to what this reference is about, so that you can use it when you're writing your milestone 1 paper. And then you'll do the same thing for describing the history of the gap. And you really want to talk about the history of the gap, not the history of chronic disease. You want to talk about when care coordination problems were first encountered. Then you'll talk about the socioeconomic background of the population, doing the same thing, just highlighting and replacing with what is asked for. You'll describe how the healthcare delivered to the population is affected by the gap in the access. And then you'll predict any potential implications if this gap is not addressed. And remember that for this bibliography and milestone 1, you are describing a problem. You're not describing solutions. You are describing something that you can then research further to talk about solutions. But we want to know, what's the problem? What's the history? What's the socioeconomic impact? How is care coordination affected by socioeconomic impact and the gap, and then talk about what's the worst that can happen health-wise, population-wise, just in terms of healthcare generally, the healthcare system. So that is basically how you use a template.